Member for Oropouche East.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to join this debate on possibly one of the most critical pieces of amendment that this government will ever bring to the Parliament. And notwithstanding, a few minutes ago, the Attorney General beat his chest and announced that he had sent a letter to the clerk with a legislative agenda. Regrettably, I haven't seen the legislative agenda yet. But I'm very thankful to receive his speech. But we have not seen the legislative agenda. So we don't know what is the first issue, what is the priority 1, priority 5, priority 10. We have checked the website as well, and as of this minute, I think we have not received the legislative agenda. So we welcome the speech, but we would also like to see the legislative agenda eventually. That is important, Madam Speaker. It is important, Madam Speaker, because I could have positioned my opening statement in the context of their legislative agenda, what they intend to do to deal with crime, national security, and so on. But as of this moment, we don't know. Madam Speaker, I want to begin with a quotation before getting into the bill, a very short quotation. A friend of mine sent this to me, and I wanted to begin by reading it. Spiritual terror is a Nazi concept which translates into the releasing of a veritable barrage of lies and slanders with surgical precision aimed at weakening and destroying one's enemies. It is the promotion of lies as a weapon of political warfare and strategy against one's opponents. The Nazi under Hitler refined this into their campaign to take power as well as to retain power in Germany. I am advocating, Madam Speaker, that this government has embraced this strategy previously when they were in opposition and now in government, and this is a highly dangerous approach that must be exposed. Madam Speaker, regrettably, I even complete my entire run up here.
No, honorable member, for maybe have some silence, please. Members, please. I'm on my legs. Honorable member, for Oropouche East, I would ask you to be guarded in your statements. There's a very clear innuendo with respect to your opening comment and the following comment you made after that. So please, be at least parliamentary.
Madam Speaker, I'm guarded. Let me get quickly. Regrettably, I don't have much to say about the member for St. Joseph contribution. We heard about Apple, about technology, about cyber. Somehow this bill seeks to introduce a conversation on cyber crime. That to me jumped from the sky. I wasn't sure about that, but I want to get quickly to the bill before us. Madam Speaker, when I had the opportunity to read this, I came to a certain conclusion quickly. This is a very, very dangerous piece of legislation. This, if passed in its present form, allows any government and any minister of national security to immediately take over the role of an independent, constitutionally protected Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, undermine the role of the Police Service Commission as well. Yes. It is a dangerous piece of legislation, and I do not know what could be more dangerous than this piece of legislation. I am not sure my friend from St. Joseph really, because there was little reference to the bill, understood the issues at stake. I want to begin by saying the minister from Point Fortin, the minister from Dabadi O'Meara, both with military speak, gave us laudable objectives. No one can complain about the objectives that the government is outlining here. Yes, there's need to integrate and synthesize intelligence gathering, share intelligence gathering for the protection of the society to prevent harm and so on. Absolutely no doubt about this. But you will not do it by this amendment bill. This amendment bill cannot do that. What you are doing in effect, and we'll get into the detail in a little while, what you are doing is simply saying we have no confidence in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. We have no confidence. They have failed, and if they have failed and you don't have confidence, then stand up and say so. The government must come out and say, we have no confidence in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The SSA is now our agency of choice to undertake what has been police work. And that is the issue here. When I was reading this, Madam Speaker, it was fascinating. I read the amendment bill on one side, and I held the Strategic Services Agency on the next side. And it became predictable. Every time you read the amendment bill, because the amendment, well, you cannot simply read it by itself, because every line is reference to something else. All you had to do is every time you see drug trafficking, scratch it off, mark it off, and put serious crime. Anytime you see persons involved in narcotics, take it out and put persons involved in serious crime. They have just serious crime the bill. All they have done is a piece of legislation, and the Attorney General, when he introduced this bill, made the point. I don't want to go into the Hansard now and just repeat everything. This Strategic Services Agency Act came out of an international imperative rooted in the United Nations and in our conventions that we ascribe to, where Trinidad and Tobago by 1995 came to put into law an agency to promote the objectives for which we subscribe to at the international level. And we placed there an agency to deal with drugs, narcotics, trafficking, related matters. They never ever contemplated expanding the ambit of the SSA. That was not there. That was just to deal with, it was legislation pursuant to our international commitments to deal with drug trafficking and narcotics. Today, what they have done is probably one of the laziest piece of work ever in life. They have just scratched out drug trafficking and put serious crime. As if you could do that. You cannot do it that way. If you wanted, the minister from Point Fortin, if you wanted to create a mega spy agency, a national MACO, a CIA, a FBI, then come to Parliament and create an authority in law that can do that. The United States, and the member from Point Fortin gave reference. He said the US have the FBI, they have the CIA, Britain have MI6. Regrettably, you made a reference to Israel. To what is it, Shin Bet? Referencing Shin Bet. Madam Speaker, when I look to Google that agency, part of their mandate is information gathering, interrogation, and methods of torture.
What?
Now, clearly, the member for Point Fortin can't be suggesting that he will take responsibility for methods of torture. I mean, there are some people, if they speak, they torture you enough. But the point I'm making is it is ill-conceived to believe that an institution set up in 1995 for the express role of dealing with drug trafficking can be morphed by just scratching off drug trafficking and putting serious crime. And that institution can do it. And there are several issues. Many have been raised by the members for Siparia, Shogunas West, and Mayaro. Just to recap quickly some of those. When they introduced by 1995 this bill for the Strategic Services Agency, because it dealt with only one restrictive, narrow area of drug trafficking, there was a procedure to appoint a director. The director is appointed, unless I'm mistaken, by cabinet, which effectively is the executive. The director is not appointed like the commissioner of police, through consultation, coming to parliament, approving the commissioner, debating the commissioner. The director is appointed by the executive. So the director appointed by the executive, who is then in some way responsible for his appointment there, becomes this director who today will have responsibility as an authorized officer on every aspect, intelligence gathering of every aspect of serious crimes. And you all know the list already, kidnapping and homicide and corruption and what have you. But, sedition. And now today, this director and deputy directors, they run a civilian organization that is doing intelligence gathering on all serious crimes. And part of their mandate, which I'll come to now, to keep a database on persons involved in serious crime. The police estimate that there are over 1,000 persons in this country who are, quote unquote, if we can agree what involved mean, who are involved in serious crime. You're telling me 3 people appointed by cabinet now will keep a database on 1,000 plus citizens involved in serious crime? According to the law as exists now, the director can do nothing without consulting the Minister of National Security. That is not being amended today. That is not being amended today. That part they left. That part they left. So this director, who is in charge of a civilian organization, is today accountable, cannot move without consulting the Minister of National Security, and he or she is now in charge of spying on the whole population. They can, unlike the police, you know why the police was given this by 95? This happened, and there's a logic to this. The police operate with a certain constitutional independence. The Commissioner of Police is not answerable to the Minister of National Security. They conduct their business based on what they call reasonable suspicion and so on. And the Commissioner of Police is under no obligation in the law to report to the Minister of National Security. So he does his job. But the Director of Strategic Agency has to consult the Minister of National Security. And my friend from Point Fortin, by Minister of National Security, I am not saying you necessarily. And you know that. I mean, we know each other. You know that. So there are 3 ministers there?
Oh, yes.
All right.
So call Sandy Grant.
Port of Spain North, you there too? Because I know Port of Spain North is a junior. I don't know if he's there as well. Madam Speaker, the point I'm making is that in this setup, they are not amending how the director is appointed. So a director takes his instructions, consultations from the minister, and is now, according to this amendment, responsible for all serious crime intelligence gathering. I've heard all the speakers, including St. Joseph. They say the problem is what? Siloing. You know, when the Attorney General speak, one thing, he has good management talk. It's just a certain verbosity. So when I read his contribution, I wasn't here on the day, I heard about inter-articulating laws and siloing, and this, the UNC birthed this formula and so on. All that is good. But the point we are making is that the law of 95 did not contemplate this expanded range. That is why, even though there were protests, director appointed by cabinet. Today, you have usurped the power and authority of the Police Service Commission and the Police Service. So, Pertel, if today, God forbid, this legislation is passed, what the Police Service doing next week? Their functions gone. Because the SSA is now in charge of intelligence gathering, coordination, database management of everyone involved in serious crime. You have just undermined the police service. The method of the appointment of directors speak to that director being answerable to a Minister of National Security. That is not changing today. The CIA director, while appointed by the president, they go for confirmation hearing before Congress. And Madam Speaker, let me get to the matter one time. In the initial Strategic Service Agency Act, Madam Speaker, we are told how the director is appointed and directors. We are not told how they are terminated. If you are going to give such expansive powers to an SSA director and directors, assistant directors, you should provide for their termination as well in law. Because if you don't do that, you will get a letter, which I'm going to read into the record now. Yes. And as I say, I mean no disrespect at all to any cabinet minister. You will get a letter like the one I have in my hand here, which was addressed, dated 14 December 2015, addressed to a former employee of the SSA. I will not call the employee name. The letter states, this letter represents formal notice that your employment as the position is terminated effective immediately. The decision to terminate is based on the following grounds. This is December 14, 2015. Here are the grounds. Loss of confidence and trust by the Honorable Minister of National Security in your ability to perform your duties and to represent the SSA. But how the minister reach there? Yeah. The minister now arrive on the compound. How you lose confidence already? How you lose confidence in a top-ranking officer already? In 3 months, you lose such confidence, you fire him. And it is signed by an interested name, Matthew Andrews, Director, SSA. But I saw this name, Matthew Andrews, before me now.
In a newspaper.
In a newspaper clipping today, dated 15th April 2015. Express page 4. Axe SSA directors threaten lawsuit. And one of these persons who are fired by the name of, that is it. Who is it?
Tell us.
Denny. And it is not Denny Ali from Tottenham Hotspur. Denny says, and it is in the legal documents here quoted in the papers, I was informed by Mr. Andrews, he informed the person, and I quote, Madam Speaker, I'm only quoting here, he said to me there were too many Indians in the agency.
What?
And that he felt the minister wanted to get rid of some of them.
That sounded like Petro Singh.
He asked if I could assist in that process of identifying the weak ones
DNA of the
who would not put up a fight but go quietly.
There's all your
Denny is reporting that Mr. Andrews came to him and said, would you help me to get rid of the Indians in the SSA?
Scandalous.
Now this is scandalous,
Scandalous.
alarming, to say the least. The response of the Attorney General Alwari on the same page, no cabinet directive to fire based on race. Well, thank God for that. Huh? Thank God for that. Could imagine if you had a directive. But this is where the SSA reach because of the law that is in place today. Axe SSA directors. And a termination notice, loss of confidence and trust by the Honorable Minister. Which agency in this country fires someone and say the minister lost confidence in you? Now, this man probably never met the minister in his life. The minister lost it should not happen this way. And today, you want to empower the SSA to spy on everyone, on any serious crime. And the minister. So, hypothetically, and the member for Siparia spoke at length, I don't want to repeat this. There are no accountability measures in this amendment bill. And because there are no accountability measures, there is no transparency and no guarantee to protect the rights of citizens, to protect the rights of MPs. Suppose a minister goes to the director and says, listen, we understand a cabinet minister involved in some hanky-panky here and there. We understand that he's doing this, so he's undermining the Prime Minister, doing A, B, and C. Put a tap on the phone and just get some information for us. Something happened in Sumad Gardens last week. Let's say the Sumad Gardens discussions. And
table discussion.
You tell the director, Sumad Gardens last week, check the phone records of 3 ministers attended the meeting. We understand that they met there. The director feels now if he cannot and will not do that, he will get a letter. You are terminated. The minister has lost confidence and trust in you. Yeah. That is the agency. You cannot, and I want to tell you, this is not PNM, UNC, ABC, XYZ. You cannot put a law in place.
I would like to hear the contribution of the Honourable Member for Oropouche East. Please, continue, Member.
Madam Speaker, you cannot put in law this bill that gives the power to a minister, a member of the executive, who in return takes instructions from a prime minister, that this minister has to be the one in charge of a civilian organization that is a national spy on every single aspect of serious crime. That cannot be done. It is wrong. You are under the directions of the minister. The director is subject to the directions of the minister. May I repeat that? This is in the initial law. So when they took this, all they did, you know, there was a famous chutney singer, Kuva South, you know, Rasika Dindial, and she sang about the lazy man. This is a lazy man approach. You don't want to walk. You want to sit down in a hammock and rock. They don't want to walk. They just took this and just scratch off drug trafficking and put serious crime and expect that this will work. All they talk about coordination of intelligence, and I agree with that. You must coordinate intelligence, Madam Speaker. All they talk about coordination. This will not happen because nothing in the amendment bill require the defense force, the customs, the immigration, and other agencies that collect information. Nothing require you to meet, to collaborate, to synthesize intelligence. No. That happens, the way that it is structured now, under the National Security Council. It happens under the National Security Council, which has representation from all the arms in law enforcement. Nothing in this bill, if God forbid it is passed, will suggest that there will be sharing of intelligence. This bill is really to empower one agency to go spy on everybody who they believe involved. And they do not need reasonable grounds. They don't. They can get a call from a politician. Check out something for me. We understand in a ministry there, a particular member of parliament has 10 companies now that is doing subcontracting work in an agency of government. We want to check on that. Let's check on that. The loquacious Attorney General can check on that.
What, the loquacious?
Ralph Marad say if loquaciousness could have solved crime, this is the safest place on the planet. Madam Speaker, this nothing here, and I challenge any member of the government. Tell me which amendment you are proposing will lead to synthesizing and integrating intelligence.
None.
This is just to ensure the SSA has a blanket and umbrella to cover everything. And when you do that, you are not amending, Madam Speaker, you are not amending the way the directors are appointed. You are not putting into the law, which you may well do if and when you go to a joint select committee. How do you terminate? Maybe you would want to suggest that you terminate an appointment by coming to Parliament for an affirmative resolution of the House. So the national community will hear why a director or assistant director is being terminated. I don't know. You may wish to do that. But you cannot terminate because the minister loses confidence in you when you are giving these enormous powers. But something else now, I want to refer to another piece of legislation here. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I had the pleasure and really the honor several years ago to be chairman of a bipartisan committee of this House to give birth, to use the term of the AG, to the interception of communications legislation. You will recall it was done very early in our term of government because of the scandal too, driven by the scandal which was unearthed, where in the former PNM administration prior to 2010, there was evidence to suggest widespread illegal, unlawful, and scandalous wiretapping and surveillance. Warrantless surveillance of national office holders. Imagine trade unionists, members of the press. And you know why you can't trust now? You know, you must build law, not only for yourself, but for another government and another government after that. That's why you must build law. We have to be careful in this society. We have to be careful. Madam Speaker, I listened to a debate, a national crisis a few months ago. There was a time here, I think it was during the carnival, Madam Speaker, when the former mayor of Port of Spain was fired over comments made, Madam Speaker, on the death of a Japanese national. You all recall that? Yeah. And without this bill in place, a top official of the government, member of their general council, mayor of Point Fortin, jump up. He said, I hope when the truth of the young lady's murder unfolds, some people can handle it. How he know about the truth of people murder? There are two things. Either he had some intelligence to suggest that he had intelligence and information of why this person was killed that we did not have, or he was just talking rubbish. Now you have to decide which one it was. Whether he talking complete foolishness or he had intelligence. Decide that. But imagine without this, officials of government suggesting that they have information. Yeah. Then, if ever you needed another example, why not to give power to a government in this way? Quite recently, no other person than the Prime Minister addressing his mind to a matter in the HDC, where some media house suggesting that the former administration gave out houses to media personnel and so compromised them and so on, when nothing could be further from the truth. The preference has always been for police, fire, public servants and so on, but they pick up a few media people here and there who got houses. and then suggesting that none other than the Prime Minister suggesting, and I want to quote, the real scandal here is only fully appreciated when one compares the application and allocation time frame and the direct involvement of a minister, meaning me. Now, how you know when is the application and time frame? The data at HDC is confidential and private. Not even a Minister of Housing ought to have private files of applicants. How does the Prime Minister know when somebody apply and the time frame they apply and got houses? He's collecting information from a state agency which ought not to be passed to him. Because in that file, you may find out, and what is he doing now?
Members, I would want to caution the member for Oropouche East more on 48.6 in terms of your statement.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, in moving on, all I wanted to suggest is that you cannot trust any administration where high officials appear to have information in their possession which they ought not to have. That's the only point. That's the point. And it is against this background that I am presenting my case here. You don't even have this legislation in place yet, and quoting from people private and confidential records when they apply for housing. And that is dangerous. Madam Speaker, I want to move on to...
Honourable Member, I would ask you at this time to just not move on. Please, members, allow me when I stand to speak. Honourable Member for Oropouche East, I would ask you to withdraw that statement. I've already cautioned you on the particular standing order, which is standing order 48.6, with respect to imputing improper motive. So if you can please withdraw that very last statement.
Mr. Speaker, just for clarity, I have no problem doing it. Which statement to...
Problem.
No, but what statement precisely asking me to withdraw?
You just made a statement with respect to the member of the government having information which imputed an improper motive. Please withdraw it.
Madam Speaker, I have absolutely no problem withdrawing it. I withdraw. I withdraw the statement.
No matter whether you have a problem withdrawing it. It's either you withdraw it or you suffer the consequences of not withdrawing it. Thank you.
Good.
Proceed.
So, Madam Speaker, in a response to a reporter in writing black and white, the member for Diego Martin West made statements in response to a reporter, which I quote from. And if that is what I'm withdrawing, I withdraw it. But I was just quoting from the words of the member for Diego Martin West to a reporter making a comment on a public issue. Let me move on, because I really don't want to take up too much time there. Madam Speaker, the member for St. Joseph made reference to the 1990 coup attempt and so on. And they're using this to suggest that, listen, we have to implement this draconian legislation, because look what happened in 1990 when we didn't have intelligence, when there was no communication in the intelligence apparatus. Look what happened. Again, trying to scare the population into believing that if you pass this legislation, 1990 may never occur. Madam Speaker, it was the partnership government that had the courage, after several, 2 or 3 decades, to put into place, to institute a commission of inquiry into the 1990 coup. It was the partnership government that did this. Don't forget. And part of the report, which I have in my hand, dated March 2014, Madam Speaker, do you know part of this report speaks to the issue? It is stated in this report at page 751, the same page that the member was dwelling on, where the commission was told, Madam Speaker, the police inspector Thompson insisted and told the commission, I know for a fact that reports were sent to Mr. Richardson, I believe he was the Attorney General then, because after the event and during a discussion, it emerged that Mr. Richardson had them. He said that the government knew that something was to happen but did not know it would have reached that far. Madam Speaker, the government of the day had information, had intelligence that there was a stockpiling of weapons, that those persons pose a threat to the state. The report showed that the political directorate had the information. The point I'm making is that it is not only intelligence alone, Dabri Omera. It is whether you have the courage and the political will to act on intelligence that you have. That's the issue. Today. Yesterday. Our information there is that you have now intelligence information on stockpiling of weapons, on threats to the state.
Very responsible.
And the issue is, what do you do with it? Don't use that to scare the population into believing you have to pass the amendment to the SSA.
Act on it.
Act on it. Because you see, when the former administration got intelligence that there was a threat to the life of the Prime Minister.
Honourable Member for Oropouche East, your 30-minute speaking time have expired. You're entitled to 15 more minutes. Do you intend to avail yourself of the additional time? You may proceed.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, the point I'm making is when the former administration had information or intelligence that there was a threat to the Prime Minister and other members of government, those who were sitting in the opposition laughed. They made a joke out of it. But after 5 years in government, we are proud that there was no attack on the state, there was no attack on the head of government, and there was no attack on any cabinet minister. Because we took action. We took action. The fireman is now attacking me here. You have no fire to attend to? Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member, with respect to that comment in reference to the Honourable Member for Port of Spain North St. Anne's West, I would ask you to withdraw that statement. I believe I had ruled on that on a prior occasion.
I withdraw. Madam Speaker, the point is that you must act on intelligence, but don't complain that you don't have, and don't frighten the population into believing that this, if passed, will create some, synergy and integration of intelligence. It won't. There's nothing in this amendment that compel the security unit, defense force intelligence, immigration, customs intelligence to share information. There's nothing that compel them to do that. So do not come to do that. Madam Speaker, this government also have information, other information, Madam Speaker. They have information. The biggest threat facing this country and maybe facing our generation is the threat of ISIS. Is the terrorism involved with the ISIS threat across the globe, including the Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, the government has intelligence where there are over 400 nationals of Trinidad and Tobago, men, women, and children who have traveled for military training and involved in the radicalization process. They should act on that. Tell us, what are you doing to safeguard this country? Having the information. They know the pictures. They have pictures, they have information, they have travel details. But they are not going to take action. The Prime Minister stood in this Parliament and acknowledged that that is a challenge last week. He said, well, we'll put the normal monitoring and surveillance in place. What normal monitoring and surveillance? What normal? The government of the day must tell us, are you bringing, well, we have a legislative agenda, but we haven't had the benefit of seeing it yet. Would you be dealing with financing of persons who travel to support terrorism activities? You need to deal with financing of travel as well. If you know 400 nationals of this country, and Madam Speaker, I do not intend to go further.
Lift up that bundle.
I don't intend to go further, but to tell you, if you have information on 400 nationals, men, women, and children who are being trained now and can return to this country, This is an immediate imperative of yours to deal with it. And this bill will not help. It will not help. It will not help in dealing with the threat of ISIS, which is the biggest security threat of this generation. The member for Carinese will recall, in days gone by, there was a time in our history when people like Stokely Carmichael, and I believe also CLR James,
yes.
when they were prevented from traveling, one was prevented from coming back in the country, and I think one was prevented from leaving the country. Governments before took strong action against persons who they believe were ideologically not inclined to them or involved in other activities. Governments did that before. What is the government doing today about the ISIS threat? That is serious. What are you doing? A former PNM government lock up a House Speaker, Madam Speaker. I think that was the first female House Speaker. She was locked up, Madam Speaker. I mean, I don't say this with any foreboding.
Limited state of emergency.
But lock up a House Speaker. I think she had to live off a coconut from a tree in the yard.
Yeah, yes.
They did that. But today, they cannot tell us what they are doing to deal with this crisis we face now. And I want to put it to you that changing the law in this way will not help. All you are going to do is create a Mako spy agency to take the job of the police, but without the accountability measures of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. That is all you are going to do here. Madam Speaker, the Attorney General also, in bringing his case, of course, you know, the Attorney General is worthy and wordy. The Attorney General made reference to the FIU and is always want to deal with FIU. It's, you know, they have a big interest in that now. I have the FIU reports from 2011 to 2014, FIU reports, laid in this House. And Madam Speaker, without reading in detail, right, without reading in detail, every time you get a report from the FIU, you know what they speak to? You know what help? You know what help they need? They need increased resources. They need increased IT capacity building. They need increased training. That is the help that they are crying out for in their reports. In this report, nowhere it says we need to integrate intelligence gathering. And it leads me to this question. Where did this recommendation come from? In the years I have had the opportunity to be in government, I cannot recall the Defense Force, the police, the military. I cannot recall any agency in local government, in law enforcement, calling for this type of amendment. Where did it come from? What is the invisible hand that brought this amendment? Is it the same invisible hand that produced the Emailgate scandal? Is it the same invisible hand? Where the FIU speaks in every single report of the FIU, they're asking to increase their capacity for IT, increase training, change laws in some cases to deal with financing of terrorist travel, etc. Nowhere I'm looking, they ask for creating a super spying agency like the CIA. Huh? Where did this come from? I asked them. Or are you just doing that to hodgepodge, pretend that you are doing something? Madam Speaker, it is clear today that the detection rate for homicide is lower than the inflation rate. It's the only country in the world where the detection rate for homicide is lower than the inflation rate.
Yes.
And you are trying to fool the people to believe that, listen, this is what we need. By giving the director, the new director, I cast no aspersions on this man, I think it's Colonel Robinson. I don't know him, I cannot say anything good or bad. But giving this superpower to that director, and the assistant director, I think is the former director, Mr. Clement, has returned in a new incarnation. Giving them this, what is his qualification? I don't have a clue. Giving this power. Madam Speaker, if that wasn't bad enough, hear this one now. Media release from the Ministry of National Security. Media release, Ministry of National Security. Dated 16 February 2016. Madam Speaker, they announced with fanfare that the National Operations Center and the National Training Agency is now what? Incorporated. Well, that can be a lawful incorporation, but incorporated into the Strategic Services Agency. You see what happened there? This national spying unit now has within it now this is a civilian unit in the Ministry of National Security, has two other units, Security Training and National Operations Center. This is remarkable. The National Operations Center was supposed to be the flagship of national security, coordinating all the arms. If you have a flood, they're supposed to be on top of that with information. If you have a kidnapping, information get to them and they share. That was really the unit to share information, National Operations Center, to manage crowd control for Carnival, to do every single thing possible to coordinate the intelligence units and to coordinate national security. That was why it's called the National Operations Center, with a headquarters. And they were supposed to embark, I think, into some program with a foreign government for their equipment and their IT support and so on. You have taken that now, that was supposed to be this mega operations center, to help monitor, coordinate security for Carnival, coordinate crowd control, coordinate kidnapping, coordinate any, what would the police call, blocking up the road again, and you have subsumed that under the civilian agency that is responsible and reports to the National Security Minister. Now, why I'm hoping the next speaker can tell us, is this practical? The member for Siparia touched it. You are not telling us what is now the your new recruitment policy. What is the new administrative structure, the new staffing arrangement, that you can now deal with 1,000 people involved in serious crime. You can deal with this expanded mandate. You can manage the NOC and the NSTA. It is the same SSA.
Compensation.
And ministers speaking later must tell us, what are you going to put in place? But what you put in place must also be done according to the law. And the Attorney General, who likes to quote judgments and Lord Diplock and Lord Wolf and Lord everything, must tell us whether there is any constitutional breach when there are no accountability measures in a bill like this that infringe the rights of innocent citizens. The issue of privacy has been raised by several speakers.
Yeah, so what right?
And this matter, Madam Speaker, I'm telling you, it will be challenged in court if passed in this present form. The court will determine this, because you come for a simple majority to infringe on the rights of citizens.
What is this?
As if that wasn't bad enough, it is unworkable, it is impractical. I have told you, as I said in the beginning, Madam Speaker, as I said in the beginning, I will tell you, coming down to the end now, Mr. Speaker. I will come down to the end by saying what I said in the beginning. You cannot sit down and draft a bill by just scratching off drug trafficking and narcotics and putting serious crimes. By scratching off that and putting serious crime as about 25 different areas, and saying the same institution, appointed the same way, answerable to a minister, will now become a national spying agency. What is the position of the Commissioner of Police? The police service said they never hear anything about this before in their life. You have now usurped their power and their authority and their work. If the Prime Minister can't find a minister can't be found, would they ask the SSA to find him? The Prime Minister said he had to what? Order a minister out of his ministry building. I don't know which minister is that.
Who is that? Who is that?
They had to order a minister. He had to race a minister out of the towers.
Out of the tower?
Had to race somebody out of the towers. Now, I want to tell you that minister was high.
What?
Because the office is on the 18th floor, I think.
Oh.
The minister was high to ensure that they couldn't find him. He was supposed to be at one ministry on Sackville Street. I think he was in a ministry on the 18th floor high. And the Prime Minister chased him out. And if you know the identity of that minister, in fact, there is one occasion I empathize with the Prime Minister.
What is smoking?
Madam Speaker, how much? A minute. Madam Speaker, let me summarize my argument very carefully. I mean no ill will to any member, and certainly not to point forth in Dabadi Amera, when I say that a civilian institution created for a particular limited and restrictive purpose in 1995 cannot just by a pencil and a ruler change their scope, their functions, their role in national security and law enforcement. You cannot do it in that way. If you want to create an authority as a CIA and FBI or MI6, do so properly by coming to Parliament. Repeal the law. Just repeal the 1995 Act and bring a new law to create a new authority, properly appointed, with checks and balances, with accountability measures in place, so that the population will have confidence. Because the population has no confidence if you read in the newspaper that ministers and so on have information that they ought not to have. And the population will have absolutely no confidence in this amendment that you are giving the SSA powers, which they never had before. They were not fit for purpose. You are giving them powers now so that persons appointed effectively by the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, answerable to a politician, can now have the right to spy on every single person in this country without reasonable suspicion, without the limitations of the police service. So if you don't like a reporter, you don't like that reporter writing against you every week in the newspaper, you go and tap her phone, you go and put warrantless surveillance, because in the Act, it speaks in the Parent Act about warrantless
Honourable
surveillance.
member, the speaking time has
Thank you
expired.
very much. Timely reminder, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Honourable member for Laventille West.
Thank you very much, Madam